Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Asha Patil, Associate Professor, SNDT Women's University, Mumbai. Today we are going to discuss in this module on synthetic method of literacy. The concept of literacy initially meant the acquisition of 3 R's, that is reading, writing and arithmetic. The popular objective of learning literacy was considered to be able to make one's own signature for years together. Being able to read headlines of a newspaper was considered to be a bonus. Generally, the methods of teaching, reading and writing can be classified in 3 main groups, namely the synthetic method, analytic method and combination of certain elements of both, namely analytic synthetic method. Quite a number of methods have been discovered and developed by several persons involved in the field. Naturally, several methods have been used in India for teaching reading and writing. The first and foremost of this is, of course, the traditional or alphabetical method. In this module, we are going to review various aspects of this method together with some of the methods that are supplementary to this method. Thus, the learning objectives of this module include explains the nature and importance of synthetic method, learners review advantages and disadvantages of the synthetic method, clarifies the myths and truth with regard to the synthetic method, analyzes the strength of the synthetic method, compares various primers prepared by different agencies. Let us see in detail methods of literacy teaching. The methods of literacy teaching fall in 3 main groups, namely synthetic method, analytic method and a combination of certain elements of both, namely analytic synthetic method or an eclectic method. Let us see in detail what is synthetic method. The term synthetic refers to the mental process of combining the detailed elements of language, that is the sounds of the consonants and the vowels. The synthetic method is the main method used in schools and in a number of adult literacy classes. A majority of literacy primers are also based on this method. At different stages, some innovations have been introduced. In this method, alphabets are taught individually and then these are combined into words which then form sentences. It is because of this combination process that this method is called synthetic method. As stated earlier, the synthetic method in India is also known with different names such as letter or alphabetic method, phonetic method and traditional method. Let us look into these different names and understand different shades in their meaning and approach. We will start with alphabet method. In this method, the alphabet is introduced as the basic unit and then used in meaningful words. Different sequences of alphabets and vowels are decided according to the teaching and learning convenience. The alphabet method is being used in formal education for years in India. That is the reason why it has been largely accepted by the people as a right method for learning. They have a faith in this method as thousands of children have passed through this for their education. Since an individual alphabet has no meaning of its own, it was often introduced in association with the word or starting with that alphabet. Let us take the example of K. K for Kamal, Kh for Khatara, etc. This made it easy to understand and remember the alphabet. Then comes the traditional method. This method is based on grouping of alphabets according to the similarity of their shapes and also associating them with illustrations or pictures. The picture of an object or a person is shown to the learners and they are asked to tell the name or title of the same. Then their attention is drawn to the sounds in the words that they have pronounced. The alphabets representing these sounds are shown to them separately or in combination of other alphabets forming the words. Such pictures and words are printed or written distinctly to be visible to a group of learners. They are called flashcards, which are quite handy and in a sequence for their convenient use. With a view to simplifying the method, some persons have tried to bring some innovations in the same. For example, they select the most common alphabets or those which can be easily written or those which can be grouped together on the basis of similarity of their shapes and begin by teaching such alphabets by sheer drill. Let us take the example of G, M, B and N in Devanagari as one group. Then the adults are taught to make words through combining the alphabets already learned. In this case, G, M, B and N. Sometimes even making meaningless words by such combinations are possible. Some innovations have been done in traditional method, which is known as improved traditional method. Let us see how it is different than the traditional method. In the improved traditional method, which is used in Delhi for many years, this method is based on grouping of alphabets according to the similarity of their shapes and also associating them with pictures and words. The picture of an object is shown to the learners and they are asked to pronounce the name of the object. Then their attention was drawn towards the sounds in the word they have pronounced. Then the alphabets representing those sounds are shown to them separately at first and then combined to make the word, which is printed below the picture of the object. The next method is alphabetic method. In this method, alphabets having similar structure are grouped on each page of the primer for enabling the adults to learn to write the alphabets with ease. These alphabets are drilled by them through connected or unconnected words, phrases and sentences. Pictures are there on each page to help the learners to recognize the alphabets and words. Then, in the similar method, the vowels, signs and conjunct consonants are introduced to the learners through words, sentences, even small paragraphs. The words, sentences and topics used for the purpose are quite simple and relevant to the adult's day-to-day life. This method was prominently used by the Mysore State Education Council for Kannada language. The primer intended to be completed in 12 hours. On finishing the primer, the learner was expected to recognize 30 characters of the alphabet. The primer was followed by Reader 2, which introduced the vowel signs and conjunct consonants. Drill was provided through words, sentences and running matter. This content was intended to be finished in 63 hours, at the end of which the learner was expected to know all the alphabets and read anything written in simple language. This is followed by Reader 3. This contains stories, narratives and dialogues on interesting topics and was intended to be completed in 75 hours. On completion of this, the adult learner is supposed to be in a position to read newspaper and understand what is read, to be well versed in arithmetical calculations used in these day-to-day transactions, to be able to write a letter or an application, possess general knowledge of history, geography and socio-economic and political situations of his country. Thus, the adult learner was expected to complete the entire process within 150 hours. There are two versions of alphabetic method. The first version is alphabetic picture association method. This is commonly known as Lubbock method, which is named after the author, the well-known personality Dr. Frank C. Lubbock. The basic theory behind this method is that the learners are able to recall to memory the shape of the alphabet if it resembles the shape of an object whose name begins with the same alphabet. For instance, the picture of tap resembles the alphabet, and so if the learner can recall to memory the picture of null, that is tap, they could easily remember the shape of the alphabet N. Whether the approach really helps the learner is a debatable point, and there is considerable difference of opinion about this theory. One of the serious disadvantages of this method is that such natural resemblances of alphabets and objects cannot be found for all alphabets. However, one of the very attractive features of this method is that suitably graded reader 1 to 4 are available for immediate follow-up of the Lubbock primer and charts. Next method is Awasthi method. This method is devised by late Shri B. D. Awasthi from Lucknow. This was based on the modern principles of educational psychology. This method was an improved version of synthetic method. The only variation is that this method was based on the modern principles of educational psychology in place of the traditional system of synthetic method. In this method, unlike synthetic method, all the alphabets and strokes were not memorized by drills from the beginning, but 3 alphabets were placed for recognition. Alongside, the learners were also made to write, so that the brain and hand work in coordination. By doing so, it becomes easier for the participants to memorize. Words are constructed by joining the few learnt alphabets, and from the words sentences are made, which are meaningful and encouraging for participants. No primer as such in the form of a book was prescribed by the author. Instead, he had prepared a guidebook and charts. There were 20 charts. The alphabets, their different strokes and the words and the sentences made out of them were serially numbered, and they were to be taught in the definite order designed by the author. It is claimed by the author that the adult learns all the Hindi alphabets, the vowels, signs and a few conjuncts in 20 days. He is also able to read 363 words and 200 sentences formed with them. This claim was based on the experience, as the method had been widely used in community development blocks in Uttar Pradesh in early 50s. Writing of alphabets was first taught and then reading was taught. After learning the alphabets, the author used 6 graded follow-up books which contain 24 pages each for further learning and fixing the literacy knowledge by the adult learners. These books were mainly in story form. The next technique is sound technique. This is in fact the synthetic method in which the participants are familiarized with the sound of alphabets instead of their names. When the participants pronounce several alphabets together, then meaningful words are formed by joining these alphabets. Let us take the example of K, L and M. When pronounced together, make the word kalam. Kalam means pen. The participants thus start learning to form words. Advantages of synthetic method include various characters. Most of the teachers in the literacy classes are educated through the alphabet method of teaching. Hence, they find it convenient to teach through this method. The learners too regard the recognition of alphabets as the basis of language learning, as they have been seeing children in the school and around learning through the same method. As a result, the perception of both teachers and learners about this method is that it is easy to teach and learn through the same. Let us see the criticism about synthetic method. The teaching through alphabet method is meaningless as an individual alphabet does not have its own meaning as such. As the alphabets in themselves are meaningless, the learning exercise is boring as well as time consuming. Though the learners learn reading through this method, they tend to read mechanically without understanding. Since there is no scope for discussion, there is hardly a scope for creation of awareness. Specimen of alphabet are given in this lesson. The specimen is taken from the primer Meri Kitab produced by State Resource Center, Jamia, New Delhi. The primer 1 introduces all the alphabets in their traditional order in 20 lessons. It also introduces numeral up to 100. Since the alphabet teaching primers constructed with imagination don't just teach the alphabets but introduces certain novelties. This primer also does the same. While teaching the alphabets, it tries to impart certain useful information, generally known as awareness. For example, importance of cleanliness. There is a lesson-wise teacher guide. It instructs the teacher to read first the portion of the guide concerning the lesson he is going to teach and then impart the given information. For example, when he teaches the learners A with the help of the illustration of the object anar, that is pomegranate, he asks a question: what type of physician do you see when you get sick? The answer is generally doctor, but some of them may say we go to Hakimji or Vaidyaji. Then the teacher says there are several systems of treatment in our country. One of them is Vedic system of medicine. According to this system, anar has several medicinal uses. For example, its leaves and flowers are useful in the treatment of eye diseases. its seeds and bark are used to treat tonsillates and other diseases related to gum. Now, let us take another example. Take the letter ch. Now, this alphabet is taught by showing a picture of a roof. In Hindi it is called chhat. Let us see the picture. The picture depicts a man making a thatched roof. Now the teacher gives information about it. Teacher tells the learners, nowadays it is possible to make fireproof thatched huts. Based on this, the teacher conducts discussion. Learners may ask how the roof is constructed, what is the price, is it really available in India? Such questions and answers will go on maybe for 5 or 10 minutes or sometimes more than that. Then the drill of the letter or alphabet is followed. All the letters or alphabets but no vowels were introduced in this manner in the traditional order. Each lesson had only 2 or 3 letters to be mastered. Now take one more lesson. This picture is from Meri Kitab, a primer. This picture is seldom understood. Therefore, before introducing E, the teacher asks the learner to name their friends. A Christian name sometimes pops up, but generally not. Then he asks the question, have you heard such names as Mary, Paul, Joseph, or have you seen a church? The answer is generally yes. Then he goes on to explain that there are followers of several religions in our country. One of them is Christian. Isa is their apostle. He was put on cross for teaching his followers that there is kingdom of God on earth. Religion means taking care of the sick and the downtrodden. As soon as the lesson permits, words are built up consisting of alphabets taught like I, Kai, Eek, etc. But the Jamia system does not permit many words building exercise till all the alphabets are introduced. The main emphasis is on recognition of alphabets with the help of picture. To conclude, I would like to say that one of the most important and traditional method of teaching adults is synthetic method. It has been practiced since ages in formal education system. While using this method in literacy teaching, quite a few people have come up with innovative efforts. These efforts have given some new approaches to the method. To summarize, I would like to say that this module has focused on one of the important method of teaching adults. The module has mentioned the 3 main literacy methods, namely synthetic method, analytic method and analytic synthetic method or eclectic method. The module being devoted to synthetic method, various methods have been described and its characteristics are also mentioned. It is also pointed out that the synthetic method is also known as letter or alphabet method, phonetic method and traditional method. The module has then described in detail some typical variations in these 4 types mentioned. In course of description, the module has thrown light on innovative efforts by some persons who came up with some new approach to this method. Besides synthetic method, The module has described sound technique in brief. In the concluding part, the module has dealt with advantages of synthetic method as well as criticism thereon. Ultimately, some examples from literacy primers based on synthetic method have been given for clarity of understanding. Thank you.